Hello, welcome to the second part of the writing Q&A. Today, I am going to be answering questions based on story and characters. So these questions are based on a live stream that I attended last week, and there were so many great questions, and I am going to answer those questions today. Once again, it's about story and characters. So let's start with this one. Do you have any advice on writing foreshadowing? So foreshadowing is something that you can do to predict something that will happen in the future, or this thing that came to you actually did happen, and wow, what a coincidence. Or sometimes it's like there's this purpose that the foreshadow was trying to tell. It's either like, okay, I gotta be careful because this thing can be coming true, or I can completely ignore it and the worst could happen. But if I have any advice on writing foreshadow, I would say be intentional with it. Don't just have foreshadow for the sake of it, because if you just have it there and it doesn't have a payoff, it feels quite pointless having it there in the first place. So, yeah, think about the promise that you have for that foreshadow and see how it's going to pay off later in the story. And if there is no purpose with that foreshadow, most likely you would have to cut it out, unfortunately. Any advice on writing fight scenes? I don't want to be too descriptive or disrupt the pacing. So when it comes to fight scenes are those those go-getters and like the moment that the readers have been waiting for. And I like how this person phrased it in a way not being too descriptive or disrupting the pace, because there's so much that you can say about the battle scene, like all the punches and kicks and the sword fights and da 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 da. This person goes there to meet the opponent and all that stuff. It can be overdone, and when it comes to the pacing, you want it to be just right and not feel like the battle has been rushed or is done too slowly. So I would say stick with the important things that you need / want to cover in the battle. Don't put out every single detail that the in the fight scene, like each sword hit, like all that, and how they do their fight technique, and I'll say that's being too descriptive, and that'll definitely slow down the fight scene. And making it too fast is just like glimpse it over it, like, oh, okay, battle is starting. Let's get some fighting. Oh, find the villain. Let's fight. Okay, villain's gone. Don't feel like it's a rush. Make it where both sides have the upper end of things and also the lower end. Don't just be like fight. And I'll say it's a lot easier through a visual perspective, like with TV shows and movies. With books, it's quite difficult to nail a fight scene because the reader is interpreting it through words, not through pictures or motions. Okay. Can you also use metaphor for foreshadowing? So yes, you can use metaphors for foreshadowing. With having metaphors for foreshadowing, I think I used that before in one of my earlier books. Like if you are trying to compare something, like indirectly compare something from the foreshadowing, that can definitely keep the reader hooked. And see this metaphor. See how the metaphor is kind of like, it's kind of playing with me. It like the metaphor can like kind of play around and kind of fiddle its way beyond the foreshadowing, and something to just think about. But yes, definitely you can use metaphor for foreshadowing as long as it has some purpose in the story and it's used intentionally. Does anyone have tips for writing emotional scenes? I feel like that's my weakest point. So, when it comes to writing emotional scenes, usually you want to slow down because you want the emotions to play out like smoothly, and you want the tension to go higher. So I'll say yes, slow it down and have a build up. Like, and also with those emotional scenes, have them feel passionate about why they're saying it. It's kind of like an argument, except you're putting more stakes to it. When it comes to emotional scenes can definitely raise the stakes up higher and cause more conflict and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what I would say. If there was another thing, writing emotional scenes, like it doesn't have to be everyone crying or something. I would say like have the have the characters feel a certain way about what is going on, or something that is about to happen, or something like that. So I am writing a book that contains a lot that happened before the book in terms of lore. It's pulled from a Greek myth. How do I neatly explain what happened while also doing dual point of view? So I'm going to answer the first part, which is I'm writing a book that contains a lot that happened before the book in terms of lore. So I've kind of done this before with my previous book. So I'll give Murray Mysteries, for example. So before chapter 1, technically there's a lot of things that happened and all that stuff that led to chapter 1 and pretty much explains the beginning of the book. That's okay to have and have that set up. So you are building your premise and you're promising that through that beginning of the story, and you're expecting the payoff to nail the ending by the end. And yeah, so how do I neatly explain what happened while also doing dual point of view? So you can kind of weave in those things that happened before the book, like different times throughout the story. Allow those times in before the book till I be connected and feel appropriate, because you don't want to like info dump. Info dumping is just telling us everything that's right there, or like just telling us everything. Like, what if this character doesn't know everything and all that stuff? But yeah, and while also doing dual point of view. So when you have two different perspectives, you need to be very careful to make sure the characters don't sound like each other. A good way to do it is having the opposite gender. So having a female point of view and a male point of view. That's a great way to do it. And also, yeah, don't make them know-it-alls as well, because maybe the female character doesn't know certain parts of what happened before the book that the male character does. and vice versa. And while I'm saying that, you're kind of making those dual point of view characters unreliable narrators because they only know so much that happened before the book took place, but they're missing parts. A good example, well, this is not dual point of view, but this is kind of like first person unrelatable narrator, is with the Hunger Games, because the Hunger Games takes place, so of course we have the original series, the 74th, 75th Hunger Games. Katniss explains the world of Panem in parts of the story, but there's other parts that she doesn't know. When reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which takes place in the 10th Hunger Games, is through Cornelius Snow's perspective before he was the president of Panem. He goes more in depth of the Hunger Games and how it really got started, and he actually lived through the dark days. And he was like a real young boy when that happened, and he watched through the Hunger Games each and every year as a young boy to the 10th Hunger Games when he was a mentor. And reason why that's also unreliable because, well, he was really young whenever the Hunger Games started, and like he knew the cause of it and all that stuff, and it was pretty much passed down to him. That's the best way I can put it. And then you got Sunrise of the Reaping, that's in Haymitch's point of view, over the 50th Hunger Games. He knows plenty. He knows plenty that happens. But he's also unreliable because he hasn't been through all of it. He wasn't there when it started. And pretty much Sunrise and the Reaping is like in between the 10th Hunger Games and the 74th Hunger Games. So it's like that middle book in a way. Like, and also Haymitch in Sunrise of the Reaping doesn't know what happened in the future. But that's what we do know. We do know that. So hopefully that answered your question about what happened before the book and explaining it and with different point of views. So now we are going to transition to characters. So I have some great questions about characters, and I do have a few pre-prepared answers because I answered them in the actual live stream that I was on. Anyways, I'm writing a story following two POVs and always have lots of inspiration to write one of the POV. I experienced a huge drop in inspiration. Any ideas? It's funny that we were just talking about point of views. So this person is writing a story that has two point of view characters. I have read some of those stories before, so I can somewhat answer the question. Okay, and this person is talking about how they have plenty of inspiration, but they have dropped. Like, they all of a sudden got to writer's block. So I would say, yeah, definitely write in that person's perspective. Like, just keep writing in that person's perspective and see where it goes. Like what I'm saying is, like, kind of take a step back from the story whenever you're like kind of in this writer's block. You're trying to find more inspiration. Yeah, just take a step back and just write in that person's POV, and just kind of figure out more. Or if you're having trouble with that first POV, just move to the second POV and see what you can get from that. And writing, it just really helps when you write. And writing in different perspectives allows you to see experiences differently, and it's like you're like in their shoes. And yeah, and writing in different POVs are very fun. It's really what you make of it. How do you write a scene where a character is in a whole magical setting after living in a normal modern world and they're in a magic school. Okay, so this is like definitely a fantasy question. I do write fantasy, y'all, but I was like how wordy this question is. I shouldn't be judging questions, but okay, so how do you write a scene where a character is in a whole magical setting after living in a normal modern world and they're in a magic school? So pretty much when you enter this magical world, tell us about like what you see, what you hear, what you might have tasted, like the food. What are you smelling? Like use your senses. Like get us immersed into the world as if we are actually living there. That's the best way I can put it. And it's kind of having that transition from the modern world into that magic world. Like tell us what's different about it. And like, are the people weird? Are people very nice? And I don't know, like, yeah, just what are things that the character is noticing from this magical world that the real world didn't have? So, yeah. And the fact that they're in a magic school, well, So I'll say be creative with that. I'll say like, what's so different from magic school that regular school didn't have, or what is it something weird that magic school has that regular school would not tolerate? So yeah, it's all about that point of view of the character, how they see the world, and immersing the reader in. Question: I have a lot of lore that happens pre-book based on a Greek myth. Oh, just so you know, this is like the same person who said something about POV, dual POV. Anyways, I have a lot of lore that happens pre-book based on a Greek myth, but I don't know how to add it without making it feel like too much because it is also dual point of view. Any ideas? So pretty much, as you are going through the story, allow the person or the character to see it through their eyes, and maybe based on what they might know about it, just weave it in. Make sure it makes sense, pretty much. Let's see. I'll just say I have a recommendation actually. I recommend reading Percy Jackson, the Percy Jackson series. That is really good. That's really good with bringing up Greek mythology and it's very easy to get in, and yeah, really great. Yeah, like I would also say do your research as well, to make sure it's accurate, because you don't want people to be like, oh, that's wrong, and yeah, you don't want that. So make sure you do your research. Also, just make sure it's relevant to that time of the story of when it should be in there, and if not, like just take it out. So yeah. So next question: how to introduce different characters? Like I always run out of ideas. How to make new characters interact with the main character. So this is what I said. One way to introduce different characters: have reasons why they matter in the story and how they connect to what the main character is going through. So what I mean by this is, okay, why is your side character in the story in the first place? why is this character here? If the character is not there for a reason, then they should be cut out. They're not necessary for the story. And introducing them, like, I would definitely introduce them like when the main character doesn't expect them. And that's what I did with my novel. In chapter 7, I actually introduced a character that I wanted to introduce in over a year, but I just didn't know the right time. And when I finally wrote that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. The main character was not expecting this character, and it mattered because that side character was very relevant to what the main character's cause is. So it made complete sense. And make sure when you have a character connected to the main character, it makes sense, not them just being there just because or for plot's sake. You do not want a character who's a plot device and like, turn right, turn left. Oh, don't go there. Miss So-and-so's there. I don't know. Like, don't use them as a plot device. That really sucks. So, let's see. Do I want to say anything about? Oh yes, and make sure they connect with the main character. It doesn't always have to be directly. It can be indirectly. Make sure once again it's intentional. Like you intended them to meet here in this particular place at this particular time because blah 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 blah. How do I write the prologue in the perspective of a villain? I want to keep it mysterious, but also very informative as it gives insights on my main character's internal conflict. So, this is what I said. Give your villain a clear motive while still leaving certain parts open-ended. It's kind of like being vague. It's definitely possible. I've done it before. So, it's very important to give your villain a motive. I'm actually going to make a future video about the villain and definitely like having a motive and all that stuff. But it's very important for your villain to have a motive because if your villain is there to be there for the sake of evil, then we're going to drop the book and hate it. Well, of course we'll want to know their plan, but it's like, we can tell you're the villain and you're just doing this for world domination. Like, give a deeper reason other than world domination and the sake of being evil. Because that's pretty cliche. Can I say that? Cliche? And a clear motive gives us a reason why we should keep an eye on the villain. One thing I would say that you should definitely avoid when you're starting out with a villain is that don't have us root for them. Because if you do, we would want the villain to win and not the hero. And I don't know. I guess you can somewhat make your villain likable, but don't like what they're doing. But don't let us like what they're doing. Okay? Because, no, that's bad. That's just bad. And definitely leave certain parts open-ended. If you just tell us everything, the villain's plans and all, we're going to expect it. And the main character is going to be like, okay, I got to get a better plan. Actually, no, you're going to make your main character an idiot for making the villain tell us all about it. And it actually makes your villain look even more bad because they told everyone in the beginning, this is the plan. Very few stories work like that. I don't have examples, but don't have the villain just tell us every single thing. And good chance the readers are going to put down that book because the villain just told us all the plan. So having certain things open-ended allows the villain to still execute their plan while keeping us on the edge of our seat. And I'll give you an example with Mermaid Mysteries. So the first book, I actually start out with that, with the villain. And really, it's not about, oh, this is my plan and all that stuff. I tease a little bit of things that kind of happens, or that could lead up to what's going to happen, or blah, blah, blah. So it can work. And I do leave it open-ended in the beginning of the book. So, yes. So, next question. I have a character who has a lot of trauma and doesn't know who to trust. I often don't know how she would react. Can you help me? So, writing trauma is not the easiest thing in the world to talk about. But if you want to if you want to write a character who has this trauma, I would start writing outside of the book that will give you an understanding of the character, what happened to them and all that stuff. And maybe you can process it with them. What I like to do is some character therapy, because I have characters who have some traumatic backstories that they don't like to bring up. And the only place that they'll bring it up is literally character therapy. And yeah, that works out for me. And whenever you're entering into the story, the actual story, definitely show what's going on, because we want to understand their internal conflict. And of course, it's going to be a process. And especially, who can I tell this to? Who can I trust? Well, I hope you can trust us, the readers, since you're telling us about the character's trauma. If not, it'll be anyways, it's okay. It's okay. But that's what I would say when it comes to that question. And also, don't make it easy. Don't make it easy. Make it very hard at the beginning and allow your character to grow. So the character's trauma is literally that internal conflict, and they can't open up. So as the story progresses, the character slowly opens up from their trauma. They're still afraid of whatever happened, but they're slowly realizing that they need to let go in order to move on. Something like that. I'm writing a character who is a princess that has to fight for her kingdom. How do I write without her being the stereotypical female boss? Okay. So this is bringing up strong female main character vibes. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I was thinking about when I read this question. So make her girly. Make her do girly things. Bits and pieces throughout the story. Make her do girly things. Make her vulnerable at times that we don't think that they're vulnerable. Because, okay, here's the thing. We expect princesses to be perfect, beautiful, pretty pink princesses. But they're human too. So definitely show those signs of them being vulnerable. And it's okay for them to not like things. Because, like I said, they're human. So, yeah. And dive deep into their personality beyond what the public eye would see. What is something that the public eye would not see? And then last question, is it okay to add like maybe female main character or male main character singing a song, like made up lyrics alone in the dark or something? And here's my response. Yes, totally. I did that for my first 2 books. So, hey, let your characters have their moment. So this can be them opening up to their vulnerabilities. Maybe they just want to let it out. Maybe they're in a dark corner, just in private, and they're like, why not I sing a song? Or maybe their adrenaline's rushing so much that they're like, oh, I gotta get this out. I gotta get this out. And all that stuff. And I did this for my first 2 books in Mermaid Mysteries. The words came to me, and I was like, come on, why not? And yeah, it's very fun. It's very, very fun. And this will conclude the second part of the writing Q&A. The next part will go over some book questions, and I can't wait